Okay guys, so today's video will be focusing a little bit on the Zweihander, but before I get into that topic, there's just something minor I want to bring up, and that is lag. It universally affects everybody, anybody who plays Dark Souls PvP, and you can't escape it if you play online, unless you're playing in a local area network, which nobody really does. But no matter what you do, there will be always some kind of latency in the match. However, it's quite apparent when there's a lot of lag versus a little bit of lag. And I just want to kind of outline one quick tip that I found, and it may seem like common sense to many of you, but one quick tip that I found that can really help manage lag or the super laggy matches that you face up in this game, because it's usually pretty frustrating when you lose to a really laggy opponent that's kind of backstabbing you out of nowhere and getting damage on you even though you're nowhere in range. And I'm pretty sure everybody's been affected by it. And like I said, it may seem like common sense, but if you're somebody who kind of plays aggressive or even reactive, you're just going to have to kind of just be a little bit more conservative with your dodge tactics or with your overly aggressive attack tactics, because you don't want to be overcommitting. You don't want to be overcommitting on a dodge. You don't want to be overcommitting on a combo or an R1 attack. You kind of just want to play with pokes and just whittle down your opponent piece by piece. This will make it much more manageable because A, the opponent will likely not be able to punish you, even though, it's seemingly that you hit them, but obviously, they just end up going through your attack like they weren't even there because the lag is so prevalent. And it'll allow you to recover faster from your attacks, dodge, roll away, and if you do get a poke and you get out of the way, you won't be chased down quite as easily as if you did a combo or something like that where your stamina is much more reduced. So just a small little tip, and like I said, I know it may seem like common sense, but you'd be surprised at how little time you have to deploy common sense in a laggy fight like that, or react with a change of playstyle in a laggy fight like that where it lasts, like just seconds before the game is over. So just keep that in mind, and it should make those kind of matches a little bit more bearable. Now, on to today's topic, the Zweihander, one of the swords that's been in Dark Souls for quite a long time, but it's never really been all too useful, if you ask me. And I know, some people may say that I used the sword and did really well in Dark Souls 2 or something, and that's, more power to you. I just found that using these weapons in Dark Souls 2, or even when I went up against them, they were quite easy to beat and quite hard to use, just because other weapons could outclass them so easily. And what's nice about this sword isn't the fact that it can do the most damage, or it's the best sword to use for, the quality build or a pure strength build or something like that. One of the builds that people say are really good in the game. It's the effectiveness of a low attribute requirement. And I don't really know if I'd use effectiveness as the right word there, but the sword is still effective on non-quality builds. And it's one of the few swords that can be, mainly because along with the Astora Greatsword, it has very low strength and dexterity requirements, which means that you can two-hand the weapon with virtually no strength or dexterity stats, and you can either infuse it with a special gem to give it the elemental damage, or if you did end up leveling either strength or dexterity, you infuse it with sharp or heavy and then level up your intelligence or faith stat to the 50 or whatever it is you want, and then buff the hell out of the weapon with like a crystal magic weapon or something, and gain like 200 magic damage AR or something on top of the normal weapon damage. And it makes this weapon deal more or less the same amount of damage as a quality build Lothar Greatsword. And I know I've uploaded a lot of footage of me using Ultra Greatswords on strength builds and quality builds, and I've shown that I personally think that they're some of the best weapons in the game. But just because you make a magic build or a faith build doesn't necessarily mean that you forego the ability to use these weapons, as I'm showing you guys here. And again, you can see the full build to see how this build breaks down in the links that I provided. It'll be in the description, it's at the beginning of the video, and I'll link it again at the end. But you still have access to things like the Zweihander and the Astora Greatsword, which will allow you to use these Ultra Greatswords that don't weigh a lot and have low attribute requirements, and you can still use them with all of your normal, magic buffs, magic attacks, spells, other magic weapons. So you still basically have a full arsenal of weapons to use no matter what kind of position or what kind of opponent you're playing. And I know a lot of people who comment who say that, if you fight good players, they're going to beat you because of this or that. And you can say that about anything, okay? A good player, no matter what game you're playing, no matter what position you're in or scenario you're in, a good player or a smarter player will likely always come out on top. Okay, a player who can read the game, who understands the mechanics of the game, who can read opponents, who understand what's punishable and what's safe, anything like that, whether it be a shooting game, a fighting game, an MMO, whatever it might be, PvP, you name it. Okay, the strategically superior player, or the player who knows more tactics and can mix up their playstyle, yes, will definitely do better. However, if anything, that makes my case for these weapons even more stronger. So I don't know why people try to refute me on that, because if you make a magic build, why would you want to limit yourself to medium and small weapons? What happens if you fight a parry monster who just waits for the parry all day? You're probably going to want to switch to something that's unparryable. And well, now look at that. You have access to something that is unparryable, like an Ultra Greatsword. Now, that's not to say you're going to just use this weapon as the go-to weapon for the class. No, that defeats the purpose of build diversity. You have access to it if you need to, because there is nothing in this game that's kind of like, the all-powerful weapon, right? Everything beats something else in this game, right? Small weapons are great. They're fast. They have all the advantages that small weapons have had throughout every Souls game. They're fast. They can deal a lot of damage. They're very very low recovery time. You can roll away after attacking really quickly, etc., etc. And this is traditionally why heavy weapons have suffered, is because even though they deal a lot of damage, they have such long recovery times that if somebody was able to dodge your heavy attack, which was very easy to do, they could punish you quite easily. In Dark Souls 3, it seems that heavy weapons have much faster recovery times, and they can actually trade out quite easily with smaller weapons. And smaller weapons don't do as much damage as it did in previous Souls games. And the reason for that is because you can't infuse a weapon with like a dark gem and then buff it with dark weapon to gain massive amounts of scaling like you could in previous Souls games. So having a diverse weapon set at your disposal, and I've mentioned this since Dark Souls 3 came out, I've been mentioning it before Dark Souls 3 even, having more versatility, having more adaptability to different tactics, to different play styles, to counter your opponent's play style or tactics, will make you a better player. It will allow you to kind of change up your play style, mix things up, and you see this with some people who even play the game. They'll have like 2 or 3 different weapons equipped, and they'll be switching through those weapons throughout the entire fight to throw you off. And it actually is quite effective. If you've never fought against it or tried it yourself, try it and see. And I'm sure most people would agree that it is quite effective. So just changing up tactics is definitely important. But that's not to say that if a tactic if a tactic is working for you, why would you stop using it? And one of the main things I wanted to discuss with that is a lot of people think that this game is very R1 heavy. That, all you're doing is busting out R1 and, you're not doing anything else. And if you fought a good player, you'd lose. Again, going back to the same thing I mentioned before, if you were fighting somebody that you needed to change your tactics for, you would change your tactics for. I outlined this point specifically in the Fume and Gundyr Halberg video that I made, where I fought like a 3-minute long match and a 2-minute long match, where I actually talked about adapting to your opponent's playstyle and changing things up. If you need to do that, yes, you'll do that. Same goes with any game. You're not just going to try to use random, worse tactics or worse moves just to look a little bit more diverse. What's the point in that? You don't see people, and these same people who argue about, if you're not going to be competitive, you don't see competitive players in fighting game tournaments or shooting game tournaments or something like that going to lower tier weapons just to throw off their opponents. No, they're going to stick with what works, and if using R1 attack works, that's what you're going to use. If rolling R1s, R2s work, that's what you're going to use, okay? It's what's most effective is going to win. Of course, if you're bored of that and you want to mix things up, by all means. And that's not saying that mixing up your playstyle isn't good, right? That's obviously not what I'm saying at all, because I just talked about how weapon diversity and move diversity is important. But if it's working for you, why change it, right? Why fix something that's not broken, as the old adage goes? So yes, R2s and weapon arts and stuff definitely have their uses, but again, you're not going to change things around if it's working for you, and if you're able to win with it, why would you? It just defeats the point of it. Anyways, that's mainly what I wanted to discuss in today's video, just to let you guys know that build diversity isn't really dead in this game. You still have access and you can still hang with the best of them, no matter what kind of build you use. And I'm glad that Dark Souls included, or From Software I should say, included these kind of weapons in the game. But that is it for now, guys. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Quantum is out.